The message arrived during the quiet hours of ship morning. Captain William Elias looked at the glowing screen on his desk and felt his stomach tighten. The seal of the Galactic Council pulsed at the top of the document. 6 stars arranged in a circle, the symbol that had come to represent power across the known universe. Elias ran a hand through his graying hair and read the notice again. He was being summoned to appear before the full council in 3 days. The official reason: unauthorized entry into restricted space near the Orion Nebula. But Elias knew better. This was about something much bigger. "They're finally making their move," he said to the empty room. For 50 years since first contact, humanity had been the newcomers in a galactic community that had existed for thousands of years. Earth ships were treated like children playing with toys they didn't understand. Human colonies were limited. Human technology was watched closely. But in the past decade, humanity had been growing faster than the Council liked. Elias stood and walked to the viewport of his quarters aboard the Intrepid. Earth's flagship vessel gleamed in the light of an unfamiliar sun. They had been mapping new hyperlanes when the message arrived. Work that would help Earth ships travel more efficiently between stars. Work that would make humanity stronger. A soft chime at his door pulled him from his thoughts. "Enter," he called. Lieutenant Mary Winters stepped inside. Her red uniform marked her as communications officer, and the dark circles under her eyes suggested she'd been working through her sleep cycle. "Captain, I've received more information about the Council summons," she said, her voice calm despite the worry on her face. "Our intelligence contacts on Proxima Station have sent details. It's worse than we thought." Elias gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Tell me." Winters sat and placed a data tablet between them. "The Council has already drafted sanctions against Earth. Trade restrictions, technology bans, limits on colony expansion. They're just waiting for this hearing to make it official. They're using this supposed violation as an excuse," Elias said. "Yes, sir. The Arcturians and Vexorans are leading the push. They've been uncomfortable with our progress since we developed the new drive system." Elias nodded. The quantum fold drive had been humanity's biggest breakthrough, allowing Earth ships to travel nearly twice as fast as before. The older species didn't like how quickly humans were catching up to technology that had taken them centuries to develop. "The hearing is just for show," Winters continued. "Our sources say the vote is already decided. 17 species against us, 9 in our favor, and the rest abstaining." Elias stood and paced the room. The Intrepid hummed gently beneath his feet, a ship filled with 400 men and women who represented the best of humanity. Beyond them were billions more back on Earth and the colonies, all of whom would suffer under the Council's restrictions. "Have you informed Earth Command?" he asked. "Yes, sir. They're preparing diplomatic responses, but honestly, they don't seem hopeful." Elias stopped at the viewport again, looking out at the stars. In the reflection of the glass, he could see a photo on his desk, his wife Lisa and daughter Abby back on Earth. He thought of the future they deserved, a future where humanity stood as equals among the stars, not as servants to older powers. "Lieutenant, I need everything we have on Council law. Not just the modern interpretations. I want the original charter, the founding documents." Winters looked surprised. "Sir, the Council thinks they know how this game is played. They expect us to beg forgiveness or make empty threats. They're preparing for those responses." A small smile formed on Elias's lips. "But I think it's time we showed them that humans don't play by the expected rules." "What are you planning, Captain?" Elias turned from the window, determination in his eyes. "Something they'll never see coming. We have 72 hours to save Earth's future. Let's make them count." Proxima Station hung in space like a giant metal flower. Its 5 massive arms extended from a central hub, each one housing thousands of beings from across the galaxy. As the Intrepid approached, Captain Elias stood on the bridge, watching the station grow larger on the main screen. "Quite a sight," said Science Officer Gregory Potol as he joined the captain. 200 species represented in one place, and most of them don't want us here." Elias nodded. Makes you wonder why we're trying so hard to join their club. Because we need them, said a new voice. Ambassador Diana Keller stepped onto the bridge, dressed in formal Earth diplomatic clothes, a simple blue suit that looked plain next to the colorful outfits worn by other species. Or at least we need what they control. Elias turned to face her. The ambassador had been sent by Earth Command to help with the hearing, though Elias had doubts about her approach. Proxima Station Control has assigned us Docking Bay 47. Lieutenant Winters reported from her station. It's in the outer ring, far from the council chambers. Of course it is, Elias said. Can't have the humans too close to the important areas. Ambassador Keller frowned. Captain, I hope you aren't planning anything that might worsen our situation. The council already views humans as aggressive and unpredictable. And where has our politeness gotten us so far, Ambassador? Elias asked. 50 years of saying, yes, sir, and thank you, sir, while they limit our growth and treat us like children. The Intrepid slowed as it entered the docking pattern. Through the view screen, they could see ships of all shapes and sizes, the elegant spiral vessels of the Arcturians, the cube-like transports of the Vexerans, and dozens of other designs from across the galaxy. The hearing begins in 16 hours, Keller said. Earth Command's position is clear. We apologize for the border violation, accept a moderate sanction, and work to rebuild trust. Elias exchanged looks with Patel and Winters. Neither seemed impressed with this plan. And what about the sanctions they've already prepared? Elias asked. The ones that will cripple our economy and stop our expansion. Keller looked surprised. How do you know about that? We have our sources, Elias said. The council decided our fate before we even arrived. Your apology won't change anything. The ship docked with a soft thud. Outside the viewports, mechanical arms connected to the Intrepid's airlocks. We need a different approach, Elias said. Officer Patel, show the ambassador what you found. Patel stepped forward and activated a small projector he carried. The document appeared in the air between them, written in the ancient symbols of the original council language. This is from the founding charter of the Galactic Council, Patel explained. Created 10,000 years ago, when the first 5 species formed their alliance. It contains provisions that aren't in the modern legal codes. Ambassador Keller leaned forward, studying the symbols. What am I looking at? Article 7 Delta, Patel said, highlighting a section. The right of single combat resolution. It states that any accused species can choose to resolve disputes through a champion rather than a council vote. Keller's eyes widened. This can't still be valid. It was never removed, Patel said, just forgotten. But legally, it's as binding today as it was 10,000 years ago. Elias watched the ambassador's reaction carefully. The founders created it to protect newer species from being bullied by established powers. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? You can't be serious, Keller said. Challenge the entire council. They'll be furious. They're already planning to cripple Earth, Elias replied. What do we have to lose? Keller stared at him. Everything. If your challenge fails, they could expel humanity completely. Elias smiled slightly. Then we better make sure it doesn't fail. Outside the ship, a delegation of council security waited to escort them to their quarters. The captain looked at his small team. The council thinks they know exactly how this will play out, he said, but sometimes the best move is the one no one sees coming. The Galactic Council chamber was the largest room Captain Elias had ever seen. The ceiling arched hundreds of feet above, painted with the history of space exploration. Below, curved rows of seats descended like steps into a central area where a single podium stood. 200 different species filled the seats, their voices creating a low rumble that echoed through the chamber. Elias stood with his team at the entrance. Lieutenant Winters and Officer Patel wore their best uniforms, while Ambassador Keller kept adjusting her jacket nervously. Remember the plan, Elias whispered. No matter what happens, act like we expected it. A tall blue-skinned alien approached them. I am Jor, assistant to the council. The human delegation will follow me. They walked down a long aisle toward the central floor. Elias felt thousands of eyes on them, some curious, some hostile. The Arcturian representatives watched from their special section, their silver skin reflecting the lights. Nearby, the six-eyed Vexorans whispered among themselves. Jor pointed to a small table with 4 chairs. "You will sit here. The Arbiter will address you shortly." As they took their seats, Keller leaned close to Elias. "It's not too late to reconsider, Captain. Look around you. Earth cannot stand against all this." Elias smiled slightly. "That's exactly what they're counting on us to think." A loud tone echoed through the chamber, and everyone fell silent. From a door behind the central podium, a tall Vexoran appeared, wearing elaborate robes of office. "The Council recognizes Arbiter Zex Toril," announced a voice over the speakers. The Arbiter took his place at the podium and surveyed the room with all 6 of his eyes. When he spoke, his voice was deep and carried throughout the chamber. "We gather today to address violations by the species known as humans, represented by Earth's central government. The specific charges concern unauthorized entry into restricted space near the Orion Nebula, a protected zone under Council Law 447b. The Arbiter turned his gaze directly to Elias. "Captain William Elias, commander of the vessel Intrepid, you stand accused as the primary offender. How do you respond to these charges?" Elias could feel Keller tense beside him, waiting for him to offer the apology they had rehearsed. Instead, he stood slowly and looked around the chamber. "Arbiter Zex Toril, honored representatives of the Galactic Council, I thank you for this opportunity to address you all." His voice was calm and carried well in the large space. He paused, making eye contact with several council members. "Before responding to the specific charges, I wish to invoke a right guaranteed under the original council charter." A murmur ran through the crowd. The Arbiter's eyes narrowed. "What right do you refer to, Captain Elias?" Elias nodded to Patul, who stood and activated a small device. A large projection appeared above the central floor, showing ancient text in the original council language. "I formally invoke Article 7 Delta of the Founding Charter, the right of single combat resolution." The chamber erupted in noise. Council members turned to each other in confusion. The Arbiter struck his podium with a ceremonial staff, calling for order. "Silence," Zex Toril shouted. When the noise died down, he glared at Elias. "This provision has not been invoked in over 8,000 years. But it remains valid law," Elias replied, "unless it has been formally removed from the charter." The Arbiter conferred quickly with several legal advisors who rushed to his side. The entire chamber waited in tense silence. Finally, he looked up. "The provision remains in the charter," he admitted reluctantly. "But surely you do not wish to risk your species standing on such an archaic custom." Elias stood tall. "As representative of Earth and humanity, I formally request the right of single combat resolution to settle all current charges and proposed sanctions against my species." Winters and Patul kept their expressions neutral. As planned, only Ambassador Keller seemed unable to hide her shock. "This is unprecedented in modern times," the Arbiter said, his voice betraying his surprise. "Sometimes the best move is the one no one expects," Elias replied. The Arbiter struck his staff 3 times on the floor. "This session is suspended for 1 hour while the Council considers this invocation." As they were led from the chamber, Keller grabbed Elias's arm. "What have you done?" Elias smiled. "Changed the game entirely." News of Captain Elias's challenge spread through Proxima Station faster than light. In the small room where the Earth delegation waited, reports came in from Lieutenant Winters' contacts throughout the station. "The Arcturians are furious," Winters said, reading from her datapad. "They're calling it a human trick. The smaller species are fascinated. Some are actually cheering for us." Ambassador Keller paced the room, her face pale with worry. "Earth Command is demanding an explanation. They never authorized this." "Tell them to wait," Elias said calmly. He sat at a small table with Officer Patel, reviewing information on a screen between them. "If this works, they'll thank us." "And if it doesn't?" Keller asked. Elias looked up. "Then I'll take full responsibility." The door slid open, and Jor, the blue-skinned council assistant, entered. "The council has reached a decision. You will return to the chamber now." As they walked through the corridors, Elias noticed how other beings moved aside, watching them with new interest. Word had spread about the human who dared challenge the council's authority. The chamber was even more crowded than before. Many representatives who had skipped the original hearing had rushed to witness the unusual proceedings. When Elias and his team entered, a low murmur filled the room. Arbiter Zextoral called for silence, his 6 eyes focused intently on Elias. "Captain William Elias of Earth, the Council has reviewed your invocation of Article 7 Delta. While highly unusual, we find that the right of single combat resolution remains a valid provision of our founding laws." Excited whispers spread through the chamber until the Arbiter raised his hand for quiet. "The Council accepts your challenge," he continued. "As the accused party, you may select the form of competition, subject to Council approval. The Arcturian Alliance, as the primary complainant against Earth, will provide a champion to face you." From the Arcturian section, a tall figure stood. His silver skin gleamed under the lights, and his voice rang clear across the chamber. "I am High Minister Trell of the Arcturian Alliance. We name Commander Drav as our champion." A muscular Arcturian stepped forward, standing at least 7 feet tall. Even from a distance, Elias could see the enhancements that marked him as a specialized warrior. His eyes glowed slightly, a sign of neural upgrades, and his movements had the fluid precision that came from decades of combat training. The Arbiter nodded. "Commander Drav is accepted. Captain Elias, you have 12 hours to name your competition." Elias stood. "I need no time, Arbiter. I have already decided." This caused another ripple of surprise through the audience. Most challengers would use the full time allowed to prepare. "Very well," said Zextoral. "Name your choice." "A human game of strategy," Elias said clearly. "We call it chess." The Arcturian delegates conferred quickly among themselves. Commander Drav showed no reaction, his face a mask of confidence. High Minister Trull spoke again. "We accept this choice. Commander Drav has studied many alien strategic systems. A simple human game will pose no challenge." "The combat will take place tomorrow at mid-cycle," declared the Arbiter. "The outcome will resolve all charges against Earth and determine future relations between humanity and the Council." As they left the chamber, Patel moved close to Elias. "It's working just as we predicted. They think they've given us enough rope to hang ourselves." Back in their private room, Ambassador Keller's communication device beeped urgently. "Earth Command is in emergency session," she said after reading the message. "The President is furious. The whole planet is watching now." Winters added, "My contacts report the Arcturians are already celebrating. Their neural databases contain information on every strategic game in the galaxy. They believe victory is certain." Elias smiled slightly. "Let them believe that." "Sir," Winters said more quietly, "I've also detected unusual communication patterns among certain council members. I think they're planning something else, possibly sabotage." "Of course they are," Elias replied. "They can't risk losing. Not with what's at stake." He moved to a window overlooking the vast station. Ships from 100 worlds moved through the nearby space lanes. Somewhere on Earth, billions of humans waited to learn their fate. "Get me a secure line to the Intrepid," he said. "I need to speak with Chief Engineer Porter. We have preparations to make." Patel looked worried. "Captain, what if this goes wrong? What if they cheat?" "They will cheat," Elias said with certainty. "That's counting on it. That's part of the plan." The challenge field was a large circular room in the center of Proxima Station. Originally designed for ceremonial events, today it had been converted for the historic confrontation. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy filled the surrounding seats, with billions more watching through broadcasts across council space. In the center stood a simple table with 2 chairs. On the table was a chessboard with wooden pieces, brought from Earth specifically for this event. The black and white squares seemed strangely plain compared to the advanced technology that filled the rest of the station. Lieutenant Winters stood with Officer Patel and Ambassador Keller in a small area reserved for the Earth delegation. Keller had spent the morning in tense communications with Earth Command, who had reluctantly accepted that they had no choice but to support Elias's plan. "Have you heard from the captain this morning?" Keller asked, her voice tight with worry. Winters nodded. "He's been preparing in his quarters. He said he needed time to focus." "I still don't understand how chess will save us," Keller said. "The Arcturians have perfect memory and processing power that rivals our best computers. Their champion has probably memorized every game ever played." "That's likely true," Patil agreed. "But I trust the captain has something planned that we don't yet see." A tone sounded, signaling the start of the ceremony. The audience fell quiet as Arbiter's ex-Toral entered wearing formal robes of deep purple. He took a position at the edge of the challenge field. "Today we witnessed the resolution of charges against Earth through the ancient rite of single combat," the Arbiter announced. "The outcome is binding on all council members under our founding laws." From one entrance, Commander Drav of the Arcturians appeared. He walked with perfect balance, his silver skin almost glowing under the lights. Several Arcturian officials followed him, including scientific advisors who would be permitted to observe but not interfere. "The Arcturian champion approaches," announced the Arbiter. From the opposite entrance, Captain Elias appeared. He wore his formal Earth uniform, walking with confident steps despite being much smaller than his opponent. Many in the audience whispered, comparing the 2 champions. The difference in physical presence was obvious. "The Earth champion approaches," said the Arbiter. "Both combatants will now take their positions." Elias and Drav met at the center table, each taking a seat. The Arbiter explained the rules, which followed traditional Earth chess with slight modifications to accommodate the formal nature of the challenge. "Commander Drav, as the representative of the accusing party, you may choose your color," the Arbiter said. Drav's voice was smooth and confident. "I choose white. I will move first." Elias nodded, showing no reaction. A huge display screen appeared above the challenge field, showing the board from above so all spectators could follow the game. The Arbiter struck his ceremonial staff on the floor once. "Let the challenge begin." Drav moved his first piece, a pawn to e4, with quick confidence. Elias responded more slowly, moving his own pawn to e5. Standard opening moves. In the Earth section, Patil whispered to Winters, "The Arcturian is playing a very traditional game. He's trying to force the captain into a well-documented pattern." For several minutes, both players made their moves. Drav played aggressively, quickly developing his pieces toward attacking positions. His moves came in a steady rhythm, each one precisely calculated. Elias played differently. Sometimes he paused for long periods before moving. Other times he made quick, seemingly impulsive decisions. To many observers, his strategy seemed erratic. By the 15th move, Drav had captured 3 of Elias's pieces, while losing only 1 pawn. The Arcturian delegation looked pleased, and whispers spread through the audience that the human was outmatched. In the Earth section, Ambassador Keller gripped the railing tightly. "He's losing," she whispered. "Is he?" Winters replied quietly. She pointed to Captain Elias, who sat calmly despite his apparent disadvantage. "Look at his face. Does that look like a man who's losing?" Patel studied the board carefully. "There's something happening that we don't see yet. The captain is positioning his remaining pieces in an unusual pattern." On the challenge field, Elias moved his knight to a seemingly vulnerable position. Commander Drav paused, for the first time looking confused by his opponent's choice. "Now it begins," Winters said softly. Commander Drav stared at the chessboard with growing confusion. The human's moves didn't follow any pattern in his extensive database of strategies. After careful consideration, he captured Elias's exposed knight with his bishop. A murmur ran through the audience. On the large display above, the board showed Elias with a clear disadvantage. He had lost a knight, a bishop, and 2 pawns, while Drav had only lost a single pawn. The Arcturian delegation exchanged satisfied glances. High Minister Trell smiled coldly at Ambassador Keller across the room. The message was clear. Earth's gamble was failing. Lieutenant Winters watched Captain Elias carefully. Despite his apparent losses, he seemed relaxed, almost as if everything was proceeding according to plan. When he moved his queen to an unexpected position, Winters noticed something odd. "Did you see that?" she whispered to Patel. The science officer nodded. The captain just touched his collar before moving. "Very subtle." "What does it mean?" asked Keller, who had overheard them. "I'm not sure," Patel replied. "But remember what he told us about preparations with Chief Engineer Porter." On the challenge field, Drav moved his rook forward, threatening Elias's queen. The logical move would be for Elias to retreat, but instead he moved a pawn, seemingly ignoring the threat. One of the Arcturian advisors leaned close to whisper something to another. Winters, whose hearing was enhanced by a small device in her ear, picked up their words. "The scanning is complete. The human's brain patterns show no signs of exceptional ability. He is playing poorly, as expected." Winters suppressed a smile. Last night, Captain Elias had suspected the Arcturians might use technology to scan his thoughts during the game. Their security team had detected unusual equipment being installed in the challenge field. The game continued. Drav captured Elias's queen, a devastating loss in normal chess. A cheer went up from the Arcturian supporters. The display showed Elias now at a massive disadvantage. "Checkmate is inevitable in 7 moves," announced one Arcturian observer loudly enough for everyone to hear. Elias studied the board calmly. Then he moved his remaining bishop to a position that seemed to have no strategic value. Drav quickly advanced his queen, setting up for the final attack. In the Earth section, Keller looked defeated. "It's over, isn't it?" Patel shook his head. "Watch closely. The captain's pieces form a pattern now." On the board, Elias's remaining pieces, a rook, a bishop, a knight, and several pawns, were positioned in a configuration that made little sense in traditional chess strategy. Yet Elias seemed perfectly content. Drav moved his queen again, clearly setting up for checkmate. "Your king is trapped," he said, breaking the silence for the first time. "You have lost, human." Elias looked up and smiled. "Have I?" He moved his rook to a position that didn't defend his king at all. The audience gasped. Even for those with little knowledge of chess, it was obvious that Elias had just made a terrible mistake. Drav looked confused, then pleased. He reached for his queen to make the final move that would end the game. At that moment, Elias pressed a small device hidden in his hand. Instantly, the lights in the challenge field flickered. The huge display above them glitched for a moment. Drav froze, his hand hovering above the queen. His eyes widened as he stared at the board. "What is happening?" demanded the arbiter, stepping forward. On the main display, the chessboard looked exactly the same. But Drav was seeing something different on the physical board before him. The positions had subtly changed. "Impossible," Drav whispered. Elias leaned forward. "Not impossible, just unexpected." Winters turned to Patel. "The captain's signal to the Intrepid. It activated something, didn't it?" Patel nodded slowly. "Remember when he said that counting on them to cheat was part of the plan? I think we're about to see what he meant." Drav was still frozen, staring at the board in disbelief. The audience began to murmur in confusion. Something strange was happening in the challenge field, but only those closest to the board could see it. "Your move, Commander," Elias said calmly. "Unless you wish to concede." The challenge field had gone completely silent. Commander Drav stared at the chessboard in front of him, his silver skin now pale with shock. The pieces had somehow rearranged themselves, though the large display above still showed the previous positions. "What trickery is this?" High Minister Trell demanded, standing up from his seat among the Arcturian delegation. Arbiter Zex Toril approached the table. "What is the meaning of this delay, Commander Drav? Complete your move." Drav looked up, his eyes moving between the physical board and the display above. "The board has changed," he said, his voice trained. "The positions are different." The Arbiter looked at the board, then at the display. "They appear identical to me." Captain Elias remained calm. Perhaps the commander could explain exactly what he sees that's different. Drav hesitated. He couldn't explain without revealing something important. In the Earth section, Officer Patel whispered to Winters and Keller. The captain suspected the Arcturians would use quantum field technology to alter the board during play, giving them the ability to change piece positions in a way only they could perceive. Winters nodded. So the captain had Chief Engineer Porter create a device that would detect their field and reverse it. "Better than that," Paddle replied with a small smile. "It redirected their own technology back at them. They're seeing the true board now, not the altered one they've been secretly manipulating." On the challenge field, Drav finally reached for his queen, moving it hesitantly to take Elias's king. "Checkmate," he announced, though his voice lacked confidence. Elias didn't react as expected. Instead, he moved his knight to a position that, according to the display, was impossible. "I believe this is what we call check on Earth." Confusion spread through the audience. On the display, Elias's move made no sense, yet Drav reacted as if his king was truly threatened. The Arcturian advisors rushed forward, demanding to examine the board. The Arbiter called for order as the chamber erupted in shouts and questions. "Silence," Zex Toril commanded, striking his staff on the floor. When quiet returned, he addressed the Arcturian delegation. "Your champion claims the board has changed, yet the official display shows no alteration. Explain this discrepancy." High Minister Trell stepped forward. "There must be some human deception. We demand the game be restarted with proper supervision." Elias stood. "With respect, Arbiter, I believe I can explain what's happening." He walked to a control panel at the edge of the challenge field and pressed several buttons. The large display flickered, then split into two images. One showed the board as it had appeared throughout the game. The other showed a very different arrangement of pieces, one where Elias was not losing, but was instead one move away from victory. "For the past hour," Elias explained, his voice carrying through the chamber, "the Arcturian delegation has been using a quantum field manipulator to alter the board. This device was hidden beneath the challenge field." He touched another control, and a detailed schematic appeared, showing equipment installed beneath the floor directly under the chess table. This technology allows them to move pieces slightly between turns, changes too subtle for most observers to notice, but enough to ensure their victory. Gasps and angry murmurs filled the chamber. The Arbiter turned to the Arcturian delegation, his 6 eyes narrowed in anger. "Is this true?" Trell started to object, but Captain Elias continued. "What the Arcturians didn't know was that Earth vessels detected similar technology being used against our colonies months ago. We developed countermeasures." He gestured to his collar. "My device detected their field and reversed it, but only they could see the effect." The Arbiter spoke with cold fury. "The use of technology to influence the outcome of a challenge is the highest violation of council law." Trell tried to speak again, but several other council members were on their feet now, shouting accusations. The smaller species, who had long suspected the powerful Arcturians of manipulation, were particularly vocal. Commander Drav stared at the board, then at Elias. Finally, he stood and bowed slightly. "I concede the match," he said quietly. Elias nodded in acknowledgement. He had won without ever making his final move. 3 days after the historic chess match, Captain Elias stood at the viewport in his quarters aboard the Intrepid. Proxima Station was visible in the distance, its 5 massive arms glowing with thousands of lights. Soon, they would begin the journey back to Earth. But first, there was one final meeting to attend. Lieutenant Winters entered, looking more relaxed than she had in weeks. "The council session is scheduled to begin in 1 hour, Captain. Ambassador Keller asked me to remind you." "Thank you, Lieutenant," Elias replied. "Any word from Earth Command?" Winters smiled. "Yes, sir. The President sends her personal congratulations. Your actions have been officially commended. There's talk of a parade when we return." Elias nodded, though public celebrations weren't what concerned him. "And the Council's response?" "That's the most interesting part," Winters said. "The political landscape has completely shifted. The Arcturian influence has collapsed overnight. Several species have called for them to be temporarily removed from leadership positions. Officer Patel joined them, carrying a datapad. "Our victory did more than just save Earth from sanctions," he explained. "It exposed corruption that many suspected but couldn't prove. 17 smaller species have already requested direct talks with Earth representatives." "And the Vexorans?" Elias asked. "Trying to distance themselves from the Arcturians," Patel replied. "Arbiter Zex Toril has announced his retirement. The word is that he knew about the cheating technology, but looked the other way." The door chimed again, and Ambassador Keller entered. Her attitude toward Elias had completely changed since his victory. Where once she had been doubtful and critical, now she showed nothing but respect. "Captain, I've just received the final draft of the new agreement," she said. "The Council hasn't just dropped the charges against Earth. They've awarded us a permanent seat and voting rights." Elias nodded. This was what he had hoped for, but hadn't dared expect. "So we've gone from being on trial to joining the inner circle." "In one move," Keller agreed with a smile. "Just like the title they're giving you in the news broadcasts across the galaxy." An hour later, they entered the Council chamber for the final time. The atmosphere was completely different from their first visit. Now representatives from dozens of species nodded respectfully as Captain Elias passed. Some even stood in a gesture of honor. The acting arbiter, a wise old member of the Telleran species, called the session to order. "We gather today to formalize the outcome of the challenge of right invoked by Captain William Elias of Earth, as witnessed by all. The challenge was won fairly by the human representative, despite attempts at interference." The chamber was silent as the arbiter continued. "In accordance with our oldest laws, all charges against Earth are dismissed. Furthermore, as agreed by Council vote, humanity is granted full membership with all associated rights and privileges." Ambassador Keller stepped forward to accept the formal document. When she returned to her seat, she handed it to Elias with a smile. As the session concluded, representatives from many worlds approached Elias. Some offered congratulations, others suggested alliances, and many asked for Earth's support on various issues. The balance of power had shifted dramatically. Later, back on the Intrepid as they prepared for departure, Elias gathered with his core team in the ship's conference room. "What you accomplished wasn't just a win for Earth," Keller said. "You've opened doors for dozens of younger species who have been controlled by the older powers for centuries." Winters added, "The smaller species are calling it a new era in galactic politics." Patel nodded. "All because you understood something fundamental about the Council." "What was that, sir?" asked a young officer who had joined them. Elias looked out at the stars visible through the viewport. "That any system, no matter how old or powerful, has rules. And sometimes those rules contain opportunities that no one notices because they're too focused on playing the game the way it's always been played. And all it takes is someone willing to change the game," Winters said. As the Intrepid pulled away from Proxima Station and prepared for the jump home, Captain Elias thought about the future. Humanity now had a voice in the galaxy's greatest governing body. New alliances were forming. Old barriers were falling. And it had all happened because of a single, unexpected move.